This is a paper about reclaiming entrapment for international relations. So entrapment relates to, it refers to any process through which a member or of an alliance or a partnership determines another member to intervene militarily on its behalf over an issue over which it would not be willing to be fighting otherwise. And although this is part of the classic discussion of alliances in international relations, it has fallen by the wayside in over the last decade or so. The reason, so entrapment has fallen on hard times. The reason has to do with both logical and empirical considerations. First of all, if you are a strong, a powerful state, so the protector, then you would be able to control the relationship you have with the weaker party, which is the protege. So, first, what you would do is if you want to avoid being entrapped, uh, what you would do would be to write in the alliance treaty certain provisions that would allow you room, right, to decline military intervention if this doesn't work in your interest. Russia did so recently in relation to the war over Nagorno-Karabakh. And so you have therefore this sort of loopholes to maneuver. Also, if you are the stronger side, you can restrain your protege. If you're the protector, you can, because the protege essentially depends on your help for its survival, its security. You, as the protector, don't depend on the contribution of the protege. And therefore, where you can always threaten the protege with the possibility of abandoning it. If this indeed happens, then the protege has to fall into line, and therefore you restrain it, you tether it. For these considerations, and you're not really expected to see a lot of entrapment in world politics, and indeed there has been, and this is the empirical part, there has been the observation that entrapment, actual instances of entrapment, are extremely rare. In fact, you can barely find any in world politics. And therefore, with no entrapment around, then you can conclude as many alliances and partnership as you want. So this paper, what it does is to call this accepted wisdom into question. And it does so by providing a new typology of entrapment and discussing a type that has previously been ignored, which I refer to as classical entrapment. This is essentially a strategy on the part of the protege who faces a major security crisis and who knows that it doesn't have the capabilities to address it on its own, to draw its partner on, on its behalf. And therefore, by profiting, by exploiting this division between protector and challenger to obtain a better result than its own capabilities would allow. So this is a strategy of essentially divide. It's not a divide and conquer, but it's divide and conquer from the position of the weaker side. This is different from what we normally understand as entrapment, because entrapment has been conceptualized as something that is that results from the protector emboldening, unwittingly encouraging the protege in the belief that it's going to be rescued, and therefore the protege behaves recklessly with the belief that indeed the protector will step in and rescue it. And this, of course, it's a mistaken assumption. But what we are talking about here is that unlike this case of what we might call entanglement or emboldenment, in classical entrapment, the protege is very clear that the protector is reluctant to intervene. And so the whole goal of this strategy is to manipulate it, convince it, to coax it, right, to intervene militarily over an issue that would not cause intervention otherwise. And this is likely to happen. So this is essentially an article about who engages in classical entrapment, why, under what conditions, and what tactics, and with what results. Some of the things that I'm discussing in there is that a lot of the present scholarly discussion has been exclusively from the protector's perspective, and it has been focused on formal alliances. So I'm talking more about partnerships, about informal arrangements, because you see in an informal arrangement, you don't have terms because there is no treaty. So there's no conditions under which you have to provide help. On the other hand, there is no cutoff point where your help, the help you're providing, actually has to end. And therefore, there is this danger of providing increasingly more support to your protege. It's a developing or a creeping commitment to the point where you become so far involved in its security that it is very difficult for you to back off. So you're essentially being entrapped. And this is something that might have already happened quite a number of times in world politics. In fact, if you're looking at the record of United States use of military force in the aftermath of World War II, it was never done on behalf of an ally. It was always done on behalf of a partner. Also, if we are considering here the disparate forces between protector and protege, normally the protector has the upper hand and therefore has bargaining power. But there are circumstances in which the protege can reverse this. And these are circumstances in which the protege controls unique assets. And those might be raw materials, they might be energy, they might be technological resources, they might be a particularly favorable geopolitical location. So under these circumstances, control over these resources would confer a strategic advantage in the contest between the protector and the challenger. And therefore, you cannot allow to lose your protege, because if you do that, then the other side will gain the upper hand. You cannot, therefore, enact a credible threat of abandonment. And the protege knows this, and it plays over this particular factor. So what I'm doing in this paper, I'm illustrating how classic entrapment works through an examination of it's a neglected case study. It's essentially the Crimean War crisis. So what happened in 1853 with the Ottoman Empire that was facing an ultimatum by Russia that would have resulted in its loss of independence. There, of course, the Ottomans knew they couldn't resist militarily Russia. And so what they did was to drag in Britain to help them. They manipulated Britain into essentially taking the field, and both conditions that I have mentioned were seen. So there was no alliance obligating Britain to help militarily the Ottomans. And at the same time, the Ottomans controlled the key geostrategic position at that time, which was which were the twin straits of the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles. And these were essential for settling the great power competition which was occurring between Britain and Russia, the so-called Great Game. So I do hope that you read this article. I do hope you find it of interest and you find it as enjoyable to read as I found it enjoyable. Right. Thank you. Thank you very much.